Hello guys, Daniel from TalkEsport here, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the mistakes noobs make, or aka lower ranked players. My goal is to, by explaining these mistakes and briefly talking about how you can fix these problems, hopefully you yourself will become a better player and learn from this. The first mistake I want to talk about is shooting. Shooting mechanics are a big part of this game, especially in CS:GO. They are not similar to any other FPS games I've played. Maybe a tiny bit to Battlefield. I'm not too sure. I haven't played it in a long time, but a lot of the noobs, they don't really know how to shoot properly. So I'm just gonna briefly explain the shooting mechanics. Most guns tend to have, well, sorry, excuse me, all guns have the same recoil pattern, or very familiar with due to the new update. So by learning these recoil patterns, you know where the bullets are going to go, and it becomes a lot easier to spray. For example, if I just spray the AK, I can see that it goes up and then to the right. So when you are shooting, you just kind of want to pull down and go a bit to the left. As you can see, it's a lot more concentrated when I try to control it. As well as controlling the recoil pattern, crouching as well makes it a lot easier to control. So let me just try and demonstrate. That's me trying to control it, and I'm gonna do it crouching now. As you can see, it's a lot more centered and concentrated. As well as controlling the recoil, moving while shooting is a big no-no. When you walk and you shoot, it adds a lot of randomness to where your bullets go. Let's say I'm gonna stand still and shoot, and now let's do it while walking. As you can see, the bullets are flying everywhere. It just decreases your chances of getting any kills and basically suicidal. So the way to counter this is, of course, the best is to crouch while shooting. If you have to move, I suggest you strafe, which is shift walking. So you're holding down the shift, so you walk really slow. It doesn't guarantee that your bullets go in a straight line, but it makes it a lot more accurate and less random compared to just walking and shooting. The second mistake I want to talk about is the sounds. A lot of players, especially the noobs, I even get this sometimes in the higher ranked games, they don't understand how much sound plays a role in competitive games. Let's say, for example, you're playing as a terrorist and you want to go plant the bomb at B. Your team just decides to YOLO rush it in, and you make tons of sound when you're going into tunnels. The CTs will be able to hear your footsteps, and they can easily, call out to a teammate, "Oh, they're rushing B. I can hear 4 pair of footsteps." So then all of them rotate, and your plan basically backfires. So I'm just gonna give a few kind of things that enemies can hear to give you a general idea of what they can hear and what you should do. So obviously they can hear gunshots, not with silenced weapons. They can, but it's very, very faint. They can hear the planting and defusing of C4. So this really high-pitched sound. They don't actually hear you punching in the code. They can hear you defusing the bomb, even if you have a kit or not. They can hear you pick up anything that's on the floor. So like rifles, the bomb, pistols, any weapons, especially nades as well. They can hear you throwing nades, as well as pulling the pin. Although the sound of the pin being pulled is very, very faint. Excuse me. Also, they can hear scoping in of weapons. They can hear you reloading weapons. Also, they can hear you, what's it called? Running up ladders, as well as jumping. Here are some cool tricks. although they can hear you jump, if you're standing still, so let's say in one spot and you're playing as a scout maybe, and let's say you're camping over here and you want to peek, they will hear your first jump, but if you keep spamming the jump button continuously, hang on, they will not hear your jumps after that. So it basically gives you an advantage against your enemies, as well as picking up weapons. There's a huge difference in sound. So if you listen closely, I'm going to pick up the scout while running, and then now if I pick it up while strafing, holding shift, it's a lot more faint. They can also hear you swap the mode of your weapon, so from automatic to burst. So by knowing what sounds you can hear and the enemies can hear, you can become a lot more stealth, and maybe if you want to do some special plays with it, for example, you could have one player maybe at B throwing nades and making lots of sound, and all of your teammates could be rushing A long, for example, but you're shift walking and being very quiet, not making any sound at all, and the CTs, if you're playing as Ts, might suspect that you're going B, so they rotate around, and then you can easily just push A long. So guys, the third mistake I want to talk about is crosshair placement. You might be asking, what is crosshair placement? It's simply put where you place your crosshair. Now you might be asking, why is crosshair placement important? Well, let's say you're trying to push A long or B tunnels and you're aiming at around foot level. If some CT randomly comes around the corner and you're aiming at his foot, you're most likely going to die unless you get an amazing fluke somehow. But we don't want flukes. In CSGO, you always want to aim for the head. Aiming for the head is the best thing to do. I suggest you don't aim for the tip of the head, aim somewhere a bit below the head, so when recoil kicks in, you can get a nice and easy headshot. By doing this, you are preparing yourself to encounter enemies a much higher percentage, and it will improve your chance of killing an enemy much more. The next thing, I cannot express this enough how much this affects your game. I see this in almost every match with at least one player, is the lack of teamwork. CSGO is not Call of Duty, no offense COD fanboys. It is a very team-based game. So what do I mean by lack of teamwork? Well, it could be things like communicating with your team, being aggressive to your team, and not cooperating. Now, like, let me give for a few examples, like few common scenarios where lack of teamwork basically ruins the game for you. Let's say your team is losing and by a few rounds and you're economically behind. Now, some players, they will just keep buying on every round, and what this does is it messes up the economy for your team. There will be players who can't be able to buy when other players can buy, and players who have money will buy when some players cannot. So your entire team will not have the same amount of firepower, which means that you will have some weaker players, which is not very good. Ideally you want to work together as a team, as if you're one unit. Also, for example, a lack of communication is another very common scenario. Let's say I'm pushing A long as a terrorist, just imagine I'm a T, and then I'm going, and then I see like 3 T's at mid, and then I run up to A ramp, and let's say there's my teammate who's at high mid and he wants to push. If I don't tell him, then he does not know that there are 3 terrorists at mid, and he will most likely die. Now, if I tell him, then he can gain this piece of information, so then he can know, oh, there's 3 terrorists mid, I should probably not go mid. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then also it helps to plan certain plays and make your strategies a lot more complex. So let's say you have two people push A short and one person goes B and another mid and one A long, and then you all throw certain nades to distract the enemy. A lack of communication simply cannot allow for this, and it basically means that you guys have very basic strats and are kind of playing one by one, each as an individual against an entire team, which is not ideal, which will definitely end up with you losing. So guys, for my last and final point, it will be kind of the opposite of what I was saying before. It's to not over communicate, or in other words, mic spam. For example, let's say your teammate is in a one-on-one. He's gonna clutch the game for you, and the, he's just doing his thing, and then suddenly, you know, some guy is just telling him, "Oh no, no, no! Don't go A short. Go A long. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do this." You know, basically commanding him and telling him what to do, and all it does is it pressures him, and then it will most likely cause him to lose. He as well can't concentrate properly with all these voices. He can't hear where the enemy is, and he just puts him at a big disadvantage. So my advice is to avoid being that guy, especially, you know, if you die and then it's a one-on-one and he's trying to clutch, just simply say, "Oh, he's at A site planting." You don't need to say anything else. Just keep it brief and simple like that. And if you're clutching and someone does that, you simply tell them to shut up, and if they don't listen, just simply mute them. So that's it. Tell me what you guys thought about these tips, and what you want me to talk about next time. Alright, thanks.